Hello. So Donald Trump is after getting elected, right? He's been inaugurated, he's in office, and he's been making some decisions, some executive decisions, right? And some of them benefit people directly, some will benefit people indirectly. But ultimately, take a step back, right, and understand, I suppose, the shift of attitude, the shift of speech that is tolerated, and the shift that's going to happen here as a result of the influence that America has in Ireland, okay? So he's made a few decisions, and people will have opinions on all of these things, right, in knee-jerk responses. I would caution people to hold back on jumping to judgment or jumping to conclusions around his intention based on the decisions he's after making, right? So he's made decisions that are oriented towards the future, and he's made some that are oriented towards the present. He has spoken of a desire to fund a lot of money, or to funnel a lot of money into the research, into AI research, into the AI construction, and then coupling both of them to create better versions of medicine, right? So better tools for medicine, better technologies that can hopefully deal with some of the diseases that people suffer from at silly rates, right? And mRNA was mentioned, and people are going, right, that's it, right? Look, he's now on about mRNA again, and I'm out. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater with this one, right? So mRNA is a technology that, I suppose, depending on what each individual technology with mRNA in it is designed to do, it facilitates or it encourages your body to mimic or to grow or start to develop X, whatever that is, right? Whatever it's designed to do. So the potential for these things is not singular, right? And I suppose nor should we, because how much do any of us know about any of these things, right? So it's important not to just box mRNA technology in with what you feel about the COVID vaccines and what you feel about the repercussions of implementing them things, because we don't know. We don't know the full potential of what these things are, right? We also don't know whether he's bringing this conversation front and center now. You couple that with the fact that Anthony Fauci has been given a pardon, and the whole COVID vaccine and the whole COVID situation is being pushed into the limelight, right? It's like, here you go, everyone, now discuss it, right? And to aid in that, censorship is going to be down, right? Topics that were censorship worthy, if you will, right? That weren't given a sufficient airtime or weren't being allowed to grow naturally or organically or develop organically will now be strongly encouraged, I would suggest, right? So there's a great opportunity here for people to begin to dissect and come to terms with things that have happened in the last few years, right? Far too many people were too whipped up into an emotional frenzy over the last few years to be able to sit down and have reasoned conversations about things, to be able to explore different perspectives on things, right? It was either you're for it or you're against it, and the lines were drawn in the sand. But now, after the calming down of the lockdown measures, all that stuff, and coming out of that, people's minds are a little bit clearer, okay? So people are going to be more capable of having these honest and open conversations. And most won't, right? They'll just go, fine, leave them do that in a cornfield somewhere, off you go, right? But for people that are a bit serious about things, the gates are open on this stuff now, and conversations can be had, reflections can be deepened into what actually went on. Was there criminality involved? How much choice is there when the apparatus of the state and the government are intent on putting as much pressure as they can on you to be able to conform with what they're suggesting you should do, right? How much responsibility do we all own for our decisions that we made? Is it fair for us to say I was forced to take it when you weren't strapped to a gurney and had it pumped into you? Is that fair? Right? So there's a bit of adult reflection on these things needed. And we've been given a great opportunity here. And I will talk about the decisions and things that Trump is after making as they continue to unfold, because they're worthy of exploration, right? They're worthy of talking about. Because if you haven't noticed, and if the whole COVID-19 thing and the global warming thing, all these things, all these problems that we're presented with, they all tend to be global in nature, right? So the reaction and the solutions to these things will be global too, not solely, but what happens there is relevant here, and what happens here is relevant there, right? Because we're all facing a similar beast, right? So what Trump has done is essentially, through some of these executive orders he's after signing, he's after freeing up culture to enable us to be able to speak freely about things again, right? To enable us to be grounded in a little bit of sanity again. And to enable us to be able to communicate with people without the barriers of the DEI stuff, the transgender stuff, all of these Madison Avenue kind of created, right? These Tavistock Institute created social identities that people have been quick to don and to align themselves with, where we no longer see ourselves as fellow human beings. We see each other depending on which category we believe the other person to be a part of, right? So are they far right, or are they total Marxists, or are they X, Y, or Z, right? Are they she-bears, or whatever that nonsense is, right? But nonsense to those who aren't totally entrenched in it, but not nonsense to those who are, right? And these people, as lunatic as some of them might be, right, some of them can be brought around, because obviously you've social pressure and people bow to this stuff continuously, right? And that's part of human nature, and it's a weakness in people, and it's a weakness in humanity, right? But it is what it is. But hopefully, for Ireland's sake, right, is you'll have influence coming from America politically, economically. If America starts drilling for oil again, absolutely, in terms of energy, there'll be a vast interest in Ireland, or there should be at least, in Ireland, strengthening trade deals that we have with America, right? Because naturally, we don't drill our own resources here, because we've nearly been banned from doing so, right? We don't develop our own free energy here, or free our energy, because it's illegal to do so, right? So nuclear power in Ireland is illegal. You can't cultivate the technology or the infrastructure to be able to work off of nuclear power, right? So we're dependent on other nations. We're dependent on other people for our oils and our gases and all that sort of stuff, right? So to a large degree, we either make better deals with America and buy from America, or we end up in the pocket of China, right? So it's nearly as simple as that, or under the thumb of EU continuously, right? So the choice is there, right? And there's a few options, and we will find out which one we make. We will also find out which ones are going to benefit Irish people, right? But what for Irish people now, new government assembling, 5 years of that, also falling into the framework of Trump's 4 years in office, right? So there may be a bit of a bulwark there, or a plug based on political pressure from America that might stop some of the nonsense for at least 4 years anyway. That this government, because it's the same government essentially, right? Hopefully there'll be pressure applied to certain people, and some people will smarten themselves up and get a little bit braver and oppose some things, right? But for the next 4 years, not much might happen here, because those that are in power are going to want to toe the line and not draw the ire of Elon Musk or JD Vance or Donald Trump or whatever, right? The whole infrastructure that goes along with that. They're not going to want to pull that pressure onto themselves by being totally radical, right? At least in comparison to what America's views are for the next 4 years at least, right? So we have probably 4 years to get ourselves together here, right? And get ourselves smartened up and to digest the nihilism that people who are a couple of years turned on to the political stuff, right? And the machinations that are behind it, right? The secret hands that pull the hidden levers that maneuver the things we see on the surface, right? People are just cottoning onto that, right? So, and it's understandable because there's stages of this thing that you get into where you get exposed to corruption, you start seeing corruption everywhere, so you begin to believe that everything is corrupt, right? And everyone is corruptible, when that is not the case, right? Because you might consider yourself a good person. So if you know anyone if you know anyone to be good, or if you consider yourself to be good, you have to assume there's other good people out there, right? So you have to assume that unless you believe the whole college-educated nonsense that anyone who has more money in their bank account is inherently evil, you have to assume that morality is not decided by money, right? It's not totally corrupted by money or power or influence, that there's good people on every levels of society, and that there might be good people, or even grey-natured people, right, that are just doing things that will have a positive effect and a positive influence on Irish people, right? So that's where we are. That's where we are. Essentially what Donald Trump has done has taken or created a situation that allows us to have a second chance at 10 years ago, right? Where people are a little bit more switched on to the nonsense that's spewed out of colleges and the nonsense that's pumped into young, impressionable Irish minds in the college system, right? And the money that goes along with that. And we've also been allowed to see, it's a fascinating time, right? So we've been allowed to see a certain ideology play out, and we've been allowed to see the real world consequences of that in our villages, in our towns, in our cities, in our families, in the minds of people we know, right? We've seen people lose their minds, and some people will never come back from that, right? Some people got frozen in time a few years ago, and there they will stay, and there they will perish, right? And some people will be after getting frozen in denialism, where they believe that everything is just corrupt and everything is a distraction, right? And everything is there to take your attention away from what's really going on. Yeah. But you don't have to fall for any distraction, because two things can happen at the same time and be equally legitimate. So what's going on over here, it can only be a distraction from what's going on in front of you if you choose to be distracted, right? Otherwise, you can pay attention to both things and see if there's any correlation between both things, and have a look at this and see how that influences B and vice versa, right? It's a strange thing to see people be so narrow-minded that they assume that everything that isn't immigration is a distraction, right? We need to get smarter than that, and we need to open our eyes a little bit wider than they are, right? Expand your mind. Don't be so quick to dive into this is what it is, because you're just jumping into a belief there, right? So get out of that hole. Don't go into it in the first place, but if you're in it, pull yourself up, start climbing, right? The sky is bright, the world is good, right? Have a look at things. And instead of making your mind up about just one point and go, that's the problem. There's many problems. Let's start looking at all of them and tying a string through them, right? So let's lace the beads and pull it together and see what we have, see what the mosaic is. Because we've been given a fantastic opportunity here to go back 10 years. As I said, we've had the diversity stuff, the anti-native people, anti-Irish stuff in Ireland. England are suffering the same thing. All Western nations are suffering the same thing. America seems to be on a bit of a course correction. Great. What can we learn from that? Does that mean Donald Trump's going to come over here and save everyone? No, and nor should we want that. Nor should we want that, right? Because if he can provide you with a better decorated life and a nicer life with some more money and some more choice, but he's still the one who's in charge of maintaining that control, or he's the one that opened the gate and opened the prison cell and freed you. So he's the one who has the keys, essentially. You're in the same psychological position or moral position than you were under the current tyranny we have. You're still under somebody, right? So get rid of the hero idea. No one is coming to save anybody, right? Unless it's yourself saving yourself. No one's coming to do that, nor would you want anyone to do that, right? That's a real kind of waiting for salvation sort of attitude that we need to rinse out of our own minds, right? Get rid of it. Look at what's practical. Look at what's going on over here, there, and whatever, and see how that can benefit us. What can we learn from it? How can I incorporate that into my total view of the world? And how is that total view of the world communicable to somebody? How can I communicate that to somebody, right? To try and teach them, or to try and blow the cobwebs off them, right? To allow them to take the cobwebs off their own vision, right? So we've seen this ideology in full flow. We've seen the consequences of it. I'm in Clonmel at the moment, and the consequences of it are these big, massive modular homes being built on public land without public backing, with public money, right, against public wishes, to house people who have no business in this country. Absolutely no business. We don't know their motivation for coming here. We don't even know most of these people's names. They're lying by coming here, saying they're coming from war-torn countries when most of them aren't, right? We've been lied to saying they're women and children when most of them aren't, right? All lies. The whole dish is served up in very, very dubious fashion, right? It's all lies. And these are the consequences of certain political and certain philosophical ideologies, right? So we've got to see this nonsense being implemented by politicians, by these WEF, WHO, these stupid organizations that just want total control of the world, total control of you and every decision you make, right? And your mind, essentially, or fundamentally. We've seen the growth of this ideology. It's in colleges. It starts in colleges. It is developed and nurtured and fueled by these NGOs, which are funded by these politicians, who pretend they don't hold a view, right? But they do. And then you have these polls, these stupid TV shows, these terrible musicians who all promote the same idea. So you get the echo that this must be the most popular way of looking at the world, when it's not. It's artificially created. We've seen the creation of this and the development of this, right? And we've seen the outcome of this on everyday people's lives, right? So what's after happening now, based on Donald Trump's decisions, and it doesn't have to be Donald Trump. It's just based on the decisions he's made. Don't get locked into the personality thing of, well, I don't really like him. Who cares? Who cares? Focus on the actions he's taken and the consequences of those actions and how we can use that to benefit ourselves, right? I don't care if you like him or not, or if the way he talks isn't what you like. That's irrelevant. That's teenage girl stuff, right? Get rid of that stuff. That's bullying schoolyard stuff, where you're just talking about people. I don't like his lunchbox. What? Go back to school, like. Get rid of that. We need to grow up. We need to grow up. So we've been given an opportunity to see the consequences of this ideology, and then to be brought back 10 years, where this stuff now is being neutered. The DEI stuff, gone. Transgender stuff, gone, right? Hiring other people ahead of Irish people because they're black, gone, right? That's the potential we're in now. Because you're seeing that's what's happening in America. Pulling out of the climate change stuff, right? Signing away your total autonomy and your total ability as a nation and as a people for self-determination. Signing that away for the sake of what? Some unproven mantra that man is inherently the cause of the coming apocalypse of the climate, right? Nonsense. And you see the consequence of this. So we've been given an opportunity to go back and correct some of the errors we made, because we allowed this stuff to flourish in this country. We tolerated people who made a nuisance of themselves coming out and promoting this stuff and trying to demean you and run you down and claim that you're subpar because you're Irish in your homeland and you should treat other people who aren't from here better than you should treat your own kids. You should hate the fact that you're having kids, because you're having kids is allowing this white supremacy, alt-right, and whatever, far-right stuff to proliferate. It's also, by the very fact that your children will breed and fart, and you might have a dog that farts, you're going to lead your children and the future generations of this world into climate catastrophe, and it'll all burn. So you should stop having kids, you should stop driving your car, you should stop making decisions, and you should sign your house over to some fellow who's from Ghana, right? We've seen the consequences of that, and we've been given an opportunity in the West, with America leading the way. Fine, we don't have to follow, but we can learn, right? We can walk side by side, and we can learn, right? We can learn, and we can apply these things here. Don't tolerate this nonsense ideology anymore. We can go back 10 years figuratively and learn from the error of our ways, which is what we've experienced in the last year or two. And we can go, you know what? We don't want that coming back with the force that I had before. We won't allow that. So, is Donald Trump good for Ireland directly? Who knows? Probably. It doesn't really matter. We take what we can from where we can. We learn what we can from whoever we listen to. Good, bad, or indifferent, right? You can learn from everything. And we use whatever we can, in whatever way we can, to benefit ourselves and to get rid of the nonsense and the people that espouse that nonsense and forced it onto other people, right? Forced it onto other people and tried to silence people and ruin people professionally, socially, financially, who went against that, right? Because I'm all for the sharing of lunatic ideas all day long, right? But let's have a free conversation about these lunatic ideas. And let's not threaten to put people in jail because they disagree with these lunatic ideas. Because that's where trouble is. That's the evil. That's where minds get shriveled up into walnuts, right? And they're useless. Bone-dry, dead matter. Allow honest, open conversations. Allow the ridicule of stupidity, right? Fantastic. Irish people, we're built on that. We do that socially, but when it comes to politics, we allow ourselves to be convinced that we need to pretend that we're proper, right? Pinky out tea drinkers, right? We need to pretend we're proper when we're around certain types of people. Let us not fall for that anymore. Let us go back to being Irish, where we ridicule stupidity, right? And we're bound by common sense above all else.